Good morning, everyone. This is the special open workshop for the Village Energy Task Force. It's an open meeting. Today is Monday, August 19th. It's 10 a.m. And I'm going to call the meeting to order. Do we have any media here present today? No. However, I will announce to everyone that this meeting is being recorded by TV6 for video purposes, and it will be available for viewing on YouTube eventually as a point of information. I thought that was important because this is a fairly complex and complicated issue when it comes to energy management services, and there are people who are not here today who may want to be informed later. So, can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any objection?
I would like to add, Joe Camara, who presented this to me and other people at other meetings, talked about on the back of this building, setting up a canopy so that the entertainment can be conducted there. There's a whole seating area for probably 300-400 people. And it's just open for discussion. We're not firming anything. There's, other things that have to be investigated, like sound and access for parking.
So you want to add this to the agenda
Yeah, I just want to add it
because
to the agenda,
specifically
just as talking
there is
point.
a discussion
Yeah,
in the proposal for a solar canopy.
right.
Okay. Does anyone want to add that to the agenda? Second it? No?
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Okay. You want to hand that to me and I'll just, so he has a sheet that says Laguna Woods Amphitheater, and it's a proposal from Joe Camara to add a 100,000 square foot amphitheater behind this building in the vacant land.
I think it's a great idea, but
2,000
it's
people.
expensive.
Well, yeah, so this might be premature for us on the Village Energy Task Force, because if this is going to be part of recreation, as it would be an amphitheater, I think it would have to go through the GRF board and through finance and through recreation, and all the rest of those issues would have to be settled before we
yeah.
would even look at any
Energy, I
solar.
think, is the least of the issues.
Carl?
I believe that this meeting was set up for a special presentation, okay? We are gonna have our normal Village Energy Task Force meeting in a couple of weeks or whatever.
Yes, okay.
So, I mean, this is strictly for this
Okay.
particular thing.
Oh, well, if that's
Well,
the
this
case,
is-
I don't want to stand in the way of anything.
The idea is not to supersede the meeting today,
Oh.
but just to supplement it with after the,
In other words, it's the first time that
Presentation.
the idea is being put forward.
So what I would recommend, Richard, rather than adding it to the agenda today,
Second.
add it to the agenda for the next Energy Task Force meeting, which is in a couple of weeks, and then that will give you time to take that through the rest of your, possibly your GRF committees, because,
well, my idea was just to start a discussion. It's not anything that we're firmly planning, because there's a lot of other issues we have to address.
understood. But I think,
And I'm not trying to take away from.
no, I understand, but I'd like to say this. The Energy Task Force is here to serve at the request of the mutuals and GRF. We're basically an advisory group, right? And one of the things that I have heard from various individuals is that we should not overstep the bounds of the task force by trying to get the mutuals or GRF involved in things, they should be the ones who are actually bringing them forward and asking us to look into specific areas of energy conservation, and energy projects. So, and I think that's a good point to a certain degree.
What I would recommend is that this be vetted through recreation and then the board
Right.
before
Exactly.
it ultimately gets here, if it needs to get here at all.
Right,
This
exactly.
may not be the right forum
Exactly.
to have that discussion.
Right, so let's leave the agenda as it is today and take that to the GRF board for rec and finance, right? And have those conversations there. And then if they want to pursue that, I'm sure it's going to take many, many, many months to get through there. And
Bert's ahead of me.
This was something that was made as part of a member comment at the CAC. Wasn't even part of the agenda.
okay,
So if nobody at the CAC brings that up even to put it on their agenda, so it is really something that is very distant and maybe very improbable. I don't know. But certainly it's something that is not yet even in the foresight of the CAC.
okay. So I'm going to, John, go ahead.
If there's some folks here who are geared up for this thing and want to make a presentation, I think we should, and if they're prepared to squander that, to offer their ideas, I think we should hear them. People
Well,
who
I-
are prepared especially for this issue.
So do you want to
If there's
second, do you
someone
want
in
to
the
second his,
audience, I'm willing to hear.
do you want to
them.
second his request to
Yes,
add it to the
I'll
agenda?
second the
Okay,
request, only on the condition that there's somebody here prepared to do that.
okay. Is there someone here who's prepared to make a presentation on it? Is Joe Camera here?
Want to start a discussion?
Okay. So we'll vote on Richard's request. All those in favor? Okay, it fails. So now can I get a vote to approve the agenda as written? And it passes unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, as a matter of record for the meeting report, is Mr. Moldow, Director Moldow, in for Jim Mattson?
He's now the permanent member for GRF,
We're adding him as a permanent member?
and Mr. Mattson is coming off.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Sorry. And Beth Perrick, the president, made that decision. Okay. Chairman's remarks. Well, this is my first meeting as chair, since I missed the one in July because I was in San Francisco watching fireworks. The only day of the year that I would not be in the village. So my remarks are, I'm really happy to have Matt here to make this presentation. Bert Maldo and myself saw a presentation a few weeks ago on the subject, and I felt it was important to bring it forward here, considering the EMS systems that we've spent so much money to install, and to my understanding have yet to really get them up to full implementation to the benefit for cost reductions for the community. Other than that, I'd like to get on with the meeting. I'll go to member comments. Do we have any members who wish to comment before we proceed?
My name is Rhoda Lindner. I live at 2013C, which is in cul-de-sac 204 at Gate 5. It's a united cul-de-sac. It's one of those united cul-de-sacs along Gate 5. I'm here today because since February, which is now 6 months, I have been reporting to the customer service that there is a problem with the lights in my cul-de-sac in the mornings. They stay on for 3 hours longer than they need to. Today, it went off at 9:30. I woke up to the light at 6:30. Went off, actually it was 9:28 when it went off. I've complained several times thinking that somebody would do something because this obviously isn't useful. It adds nothing to the luminosity present. The only way you can tell the lights are on is by looking at the bulbs. You have to look at each bulb to see if it's on because it adds no lumens. It's completely useless light. On a very sunny day, they'll go off in about an hour and a half after they need to. On a moderate day, they'll go off 2 hours or 2.5 hours after they need to. A day like today, it was 3 hours. So I thought you'd be interested to know. I came here because all the mutuals and boards are represented here, and it may not just be cul-de-sac 204. Thank you.
Ernesto,
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up on it.
it may
you
be
know.
the light sensor at the laundry room.
Yeah, it
is
could be.
partially shaded by a tree or something, but
That's correct.
Thank you for that,
So we'll be
Rose.
looking into it.
Hi, Dick Rader, 270D. I'm sure many of you must know that GM Volkswagen just announced that they're only going to produce electric cars. And I think this committee should be immediately addressing the electrical infrastructure and the imminence of having a lot more electric cars in the village.
Thank you, Dick. That is something that the task force has been charged with, to looking into our existing loads and what our future loads will be, and what recommendations we'll be able to make to the mutuals and DRF in that regard. Bert?
Any consultant that was hired, that was one of the tasks that he has been given, is to look into electric car charging for both mutuals. And we're waiting for that report.
Yeah, just when Bert says both mutuals, that's United. I don't want to sound like I'm an idiot, but they are specifically United. And third, asked the task force, the consultant, to look into the electrical infrastructure. And one of the good things that came out of that is that prior to their investigation, we had been told by Edison that they would not upgrade their transformers to accommodate that. And we now do have and people at Edison are saying, yes, they will. And they'll do it on a case by case. And so what the consultant is doing in third, and I'm assuming they're doing it in United too, that they're going and looking at the worst case scenarios and looking at the bills and looking at what kind of electricity demand is coming into those buildings, particularly the 3-story buildings where you've got golf carts and now electric vehicles. And so when we get that report, it's going to give us an idea where we should put our energies, no pun intended. So that's where we are right now. We're waiting, as Bert said, for a report.
Okay. If that concludes member comments, Matt, you want to come up and introduce yourself and begin your presentation?
Great. Thank you. I appreciate everybody. Appreciate you guys allowing me to be here. I appreciate Steve and Bert for attending our luncheon a couple weeks ago. Does anybody know how to get my screen on big screen? I know I'm plugged in, but I am plugged in. I have the HDMI plugged in.
And will that also come up on our screens, Lori? Sure. Great.
So first off, my name is Matt Dieter, Director of Sales at Melrock. Formerly the account manager from Southern California Edison for your guys' account as well. That's where I met Bert and Steve, and I even remember meeting with Richard as well in a few of our energy meetings, and I think I'm sure a couple other faces are probably familiar as well. But so I've been around a while, been in the industry for a while. Also sold EV charging stations for a couple of years, believe it or not, and then dealt in energy storage for a while until coming on here at Melrock. So Really excited about introducing Melrock to you guys and kind of our platform and our capabilities and what we're capable of. Before I start, Southern California Edison actually has a Charge Ready program. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it or not, but they'll actually provide their own transformers and their own infrastructure, and they'll actually put the charging stations on that separate transformer. So if you guys do, which is one of the challenges with charging stations, lack the capacity for putting them out, I highly recommend reviewing that program. That's just a side note, has nothing to do with why I'm here. So anyway, Melrock is, we're basically a platform where we collect data, building data from your current building assets, whether that be your building meters, your building management system controllers, your EV charging stations, solar inverters, energy storage inverters. If it's a connected device and it speaks the communication protocols that we do, we basically collect all that data, we send it to the cloud, we run our analytics on it, and we're able to diagnose ways to, A, make your building more efficient, help with the scheduling of the buildings, find inefficiencies. Why is the building on at 3 o'clock in the morning when nobody's there, and those types of things. So we identify a lot of the anomalies in the buildings, which actually help come and solve like energy, save energy and energy reduction. So that's the quick 30-second overview. I'm going to dig into a few things that we do and those types of things. But Melrock, basically born 2011, right here in Orange County. We're based right up in Tustin, 20 minutes from here. I actually live about 5 minutes from here, which makes it really convenient for my morning, especially on a Monday, so I appreciate it. We were actually developed by a rocket scientist who actually, his thought was, it should be simpler to manage and control buildings than it is to send a rocket or control a satellite out in orbit, right? So it is kind of interesting because I remember in my days back at Edison where I was like, there's got to be a much easier way to control a building than the way we do it now, because everything we do now is rule-based, right? So it's, I set a thermostat at 75 degrees or whatever it may be, and now my EMS or building automation system just follows this set of rules in order to meet that target. And as long as that target is being met, that's all the EMS or the building automation system cares about. So we've taken it a step further, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But we have, as you can see, we're gathering over 11 terabytes worth of data, 74 billion data points a year, and constantly growing rapidly, I might add. So, our focus is try to change the way that buildings are kind of managed. Bill asked me to talk a little bit about energy, and with my background, it's really pretty easy. This is the only slide that I had in I'll call it my reserve deck, that kind of talks about it. But recently there was a lot of changes in utility rates, and there's two main components, as some of you may know, in your utility bills, and for all you who are in attendance today, it'd be good education. So there's, we call it the demand, which is the kilowatt, and we call it the usage, which is kilowatt hour. So you'll see the two different parts of your bill. The kilowatt is, I turn 10 lights on, they're each 100 watts. So that's one kilowatt, right? So that's at one moment in time, you're using 1 kilowatt. Kilowatt hours is saying, I'm going to keep those 10 lights on for 10 hours, and I'm going to run it, and that's using the consumption of 10 kilowatt hours. So you're billed both on the kilowatt, which is the peak demand throughout a billing period, and certain times of the day, and you're also billed on the total usage of the energy that you guys use. So it's very complicated. I always say, I had to go to Edison and get a PhD in Edison rates because it's not a simple thing, and that's the simplest way that I can explain it. And I hope it's easily understood, and I'm happy to go into more detail with anybody who has any questions about it. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Edison rates, because it all depends on when you're using it, when you're peaking, when you're using the highest amount of power, and what rate you're on, and all kinds of different things. If you ever looked at the rate tariff, it's like 40 lines of different ways that they charge you. So it is fairly complicated. Happy to dig into it more if other questions do come up with it. So specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about building commissioning. This is kind of the same very familiar presentation that Bert and Steve saw a couple weeks ago. But basically, when it comes to buildings, they were designed a certain way, right? And then they do what we call drift. So buildings were designed one way, but then there's a lot of changes. You've changed out equipment, you've changed out energy management systems, you changed out the reason for why that building was structured that way, whether it was a conference room at one point, then became an office, or it changed its utility or whatever its use was for that space. A lot of the times when buildings are built, they're never fully commissioned. Sometimes they're never commissioned at all, depending how long ago that they were built. We find a lot of buildings that were never commissioned, but even if they were commissioned, there's really been nobody in the industry that polices commissioning, right? That says, okay, I've installed this building and it's operating 100% efficiently. They rely on the commissioning agent or the person who's supposed to bring that building to the most efficient standard to be able to do their job. And most of the time, they're cut and pasting or copy and pasting from a different application or something that they've done in the past. And it doesn't always come out that way. We've commissioned brand new buildings. We've commissioned brand new chillers and equipment. We've commissioned 60, 70-year-old buildings. And all our results are relatively the same. We've kind of found kind of a sweet spot. And I've never been more excited to be with a company than I am to be with Millrock. So buildings drift. So they drift away. The EPA estimates that buildings drift anywhere from 30 to 40% over time without being retro commissioned, which means you bring them back to where they initially started. So that's where we find a lot of our energy savings. And a lot of it is in scheduling, and a lot of it is in equipment failures, and a lot of it is in bad initial, we call it sequence of operations, or the rules or the if, and, or but statements that your energy management system is run on. The next is why continuous commissioning. That's something that we do, is because for that same exact reason. Once we do bring it back to standard, we want to monitor it to make sure it stays there, right? So if we can save you 20% and you're paying us 1 to 2% of your energy bill, then you know what? That's a 10 times return on your payment. But then at the same time, we're going to continue to monitor it only for that 1 or 2% of your total utility bill, right? And then we're ensuring that drift doesn't happen again. And the real reason is because now we can, right? So a standard energy management system, that didn't have that capabilities in the past, but now with our platform, we do. So here's some real life pains, that we see, inefficient operations. Kind of talked about this a little bit. Buildings often turn on their air conditioning when they're not supposed to be run. Their HVAC systems run when nobody's in the building. You're cooling a building when no occupancy in it. The heater and cooler, we see simultaneous heating and cooling in almost 70% of the buildings that we view, which is actually incredible to me. And simultaneous heating and cooling doesn't exactly mean that the heater and cooler are on at the same time. Sometimes it means they're cycling on and off. So you'll see it has a threshold of being between 75 and 76 degrees. And you'll see the heater will be on to heat it back up to 75 degrees, and then it'll go up to 76 degrees, and then the air conditioner will come back on, and it'll get down to 75 degrees, and it just goes, it cycles like that. We see that in over 70% of our buildings. It's kind of crazy. Air changes in the building, overcooling the air. Sometimes equipment is working harder than it needs to. Undetected failures. We actually had a customer in Long Beach whose solar panels weren't even working, and they had no idea. It was over 6 months. This was a multi-million-dollar project that they had. Nobody was monitoring it, and I don't even need to speak to that because you can see the value of the pain of that one, right? Bad sequences of operations, things like that we've kind of talked about. Imminent failures too. So you have pieces of equipment, which I'll show you some examples of a little bit later, where they're cycling on and off, right? So if you have an air conditioning unit that's just turning on, turning off, turning on, turning off, it's not good for the unit. It's not good for any mechanical piece of equipment to be constantly turning on, whether it's a damper, a VAV valve, which is one of the ones that come out of one of these things. I knew I could find one. One of these air vents. They have a little valve on there that kind of opens and closes. So if that's opening and closing all day to kind of let air in and out, not good. So basically, you have a piece of equipment that's supposed to last you 15 to 30 years, and it's going to last you 3 or 4 years because it's constantly on and off. And engineers don't know exactly how to fix that, right? So they're going out and they think it's the building controller. They think it's a different piece of equipment. So they're changing all this equipment. It works fine for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden you see the same issue again. And it's a constant thing maintenance that you're continuing to pay for. And we've seen that with some of our customers too, where they'd be like, oh, that's the issue. So we just basically bring a whole another level of detail to our customers to help them, solve these problems. And we work closely with them to make sure that gets done. So here we go. Here's some of the root causes of the pain. The building and energy management systems are kind of on their own. They're islanded, and that's more of a campus environment issue than it is a building environment. Growing knowledge gap between the systems and the technicians. The BMSs have a lot of functionality. Sometimes they're not accessed or used, and I'll show you the next slide on kind of what I mean by that. So they don't always come fully loaded or undermanaged. Buildings drift, we talked about that. Problems and inefficiencies go undetected. That's probably one of the major ones. And then we just talked about the complex energy rates. They're always changing. So before it was your peak was between noon and 6. Now your peak is between 4 and 9 p.m. That's a big change in the way things were operated before. And not like it changes the way that you guys do things, but now it takes a better granularity of, well, when are we closing down buildings? When, maybe when, the occupancy of a building like this one leaves at 6 o'clock. What are you doing between 6 and 9? What's the air conditioning doing between 6 and 9, or, those types of things. So here is actually a very interesting slide, and one that I actually like a lot. So every line item here is something that you'll see on your building management system. And the one that's grayed out on see my little cursor? I don't know if you can see my cursor. No, but the one you can see on the right that's kind of shaded with all the dots, that's the one where you're paying for that from the energy management system, but it's not usually trended, which means the energy management system is not recording it or running any details or analytics or rules or anything based on that. That's a lot of things that you're paying for. You're really looking at only 4 or 5 points that the BMS is really focused on and looking at. Now, I know you guys just recently purchased a new one, so maybe this is off and maybe there's a couple more that are on there, but the same rule still applies. Depending on how it was commissioned, what it was doing. What we have in our device is we can actually use this device. It's a small little device, and we can actually gather all the data, and we'll talk about the fine high resolution that we gathered in here in a minute. So then the next question is, well, this is great, but what if without your platform, what would it look like? How would I bring my building back from where it was originally intended to be built to where it is now, back to where it was originally built? Now, this is kind of the process, and I don't want to dive deep into this because it's fairly complex, but you see that there's 8 or 9 steps here. Basically you have to, they call it trending data, so you have to pay somebody, an engineer, to come in and say, I want to trend, and then back to that slide before, I want to trend all these points that aren't being trended. So I need to go in, and they're going to trend them in a 15-minute interval, and we'll talk about the importance of that later, but they need to go in and they need to trend all that data. After that trend all that data, they got to take all that data and they got to put it into spreadsheets. It's so much data you can't put it into an Excel spreadsheet. You have to put it into some sort of software like a Python or something like that, one of those techie gadget things that I don't even understand, and it's what my company does, right? So you got to go in and you got to find a way to run all the reports. Then you run all the reports, then you need to pay somebody else to analyze those reports and come up with, well, what's wrong with it? Then you identify what's wrong with it, and then you have to pay an engineer to come out and actually diagnose it and confirm that that's what's wrong with it. Then you need to pay a different engineer who's even more expensive to come out and go out and fix it. But all in all, it's a very complicated process, right? It's a very time-consuming process. It takes 6 to 9 months to go through a commissioning process, and it's not even as thorough as the way that it could be. So when we do that and then we come to us, this is kind of how we work. We plug in our gateway, which is this guy. This guy actually has a little brother and a big brother, but so we plug in our gateway. It automatically reads and detects everything that we talked about earlier, all your energy meters, whether it be a utility or if you have any sub-meters. We read all those meters. We read all the building management system controllers, the solar inverters, and we send all that data to the cloud, and then we run our analytics on it. So we're continuously diagnosing and working with you guys to fix the issues at hand. And then we can actually optimize a lot of those set points through our cloud or through our platform because this does offer two-way communication. So we can basically work back, and then we're continuously monitoring it to make sure after we've made those changes that those changes sustain and they stay. And they don't go back. So that's where we can optimize the changes of that. And there are times where there's things we can't do. I can't change the sequence of operations. I can't change a failed sensor. I can't change a broken damper or a stuck damper. I can't do that because I'm a virtual guy. But I can, work with some of my partners where they can come out, or we can work with your current vendors that you guys currently have, and we could say, hey, at Pomona College, we're actually working to being tied into their work order system. So every Monday morning, they come in and they see a list of all the sensors and dampers that are currently failed, and they go through and they have work orders now to go through and fix all those. But they have an on-site staff, which I know that you guys do also have it here as well to some extent. So we work with you guys to make sure that a lot of those things get fixed. We also tend to recommend that we meet with you guys either monthly or biweekly or weekly or something like that, where we can come through and we can help you diagnose what those issues are, at least for the first 3 to 6 months until you guys get used to using the platform. But here we're continually monitoring it too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the equipment. So this is the gateway. It does look a little bit different. Where the picture you see on the screen here is actually our newer design, which we haven't released yet, but all the guts in the middle are all the same. But basically, we're leveraging your existing infrastructure. So this is the only piece of equipment that we're looking to add. We're trying to maximize the assets that you guys have already invested in. You guys just invested heavily in a new energy management system. We want to bring that energy management system's capabilities through the roof, and we want to really make the buildings that we connect to from a standard building with a new AMS to an actual smart or even connected building, depending on how you want to talk to it. It has its own built-in firewall, built-in encryption. So from a security perspective for data and everything, it's as secure as it gets. We talk about the high-resolution data here in a minute. It has edge computing, which means locally it has its own processor and stuff inside. So this resides inside the building. So if we do lose connectivity between our platform and this, the gateway still does its job. It still records the data. It actually has 4 gigabytes of local storage, so it can hold up to about 9 months to a year worth of data. So the minute it connects back, we send all that data up to the cloud. I don't think you guys do any demand response, right? No? Okay, yeah. So if you guys did, this is a certified OpenADR 2.0B certified device. So we can actually work, and maybe that's something that we can actually look at actually for more energy savings. Now we can actually automate the process with this device. We can reset set points and those types of things about 10 to 15 times a year for about 4 hours a piece. So we can do that all automated through this platform. So that is something that maybe we can look at as another way for you guys to reduce energy costs and things like that as well. For the platform itself, we're going to talk about the high resolution data. We'll talk about how it's out of the box. It's the way we've designed it. There's no configuring and stuff on anybody's end. It's all on our end. We basically, once we've mapped the entire platform, it's a plug and play device. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, and it's always learning. So we have remote access to this device. We're continuing to upgrade its analytics and its software, its firmware. All that stuff is done automatically. Doesn't require anybody on site to be able to do that stuff, and we'll talk about that a little bit too as well. Demand management and automated demand response are a couple other things that we do with this as well, and I could talk that in detail if questions arise when I'm done as well. So this, I used to actually have one of those old black and white TVs, and with the whole family huddling around. And usually I don't have a crowd that would understand what that was like, but I actually think I do today, which is a little unique. I mean, you guys remember, huddling around for the football game or whatever the case may be, and you sit as close as you can to the TV because it's like black and white, and you in order to see what's going on, you have to be relatively close, right? So basically what we're doing is that's the kind of in comparison to the data that you're collecting today, right? Versus the data we're collecting is more of that high resolution, 1080p, whatever QLED TV that's out today, right? So we're actually collecting data at a 1 second interval for LA Metro when their trains come by. Because if you wait 1 minute to collect the data when the train comes by, it's gone, right? So we're actually collecting data as low as 1 second intervals. But for most standard buildings and everything like that, we collect data at 1 minute intervals. And the importance is huge. So basically, as you see to the left of this airplane, right, it's about to hit sonic speed. It's really the difference between, we're actually collecting anywhere from 1,500 to 10 million times the data that you guys are collecting now. I mean, it's a little bit ridiculous how much more data that we're collecting than your standard energy management system or building automation system, is meant or even designed to trend. So most energy management systems only have a certain amount of local capacity to store data, right? And that's one of the biggest issues that I hear from customers all the time. Well, how can you do this? Because my system only has so much storage, and I'm already running into issues with trying to trend some of the things that I want to trend. And I say, look, that's exactly the point. I'm just listening to it, and I'm taking all that data, and I'm sending it to my cloud. I'm not storing it anywhere on your platform. I'm storing it here, and then I'm sending it up to my cloud, and I'm going to store it up in my cloud. So that's a big difference. So here is, and I don't want to get technical or too technical, but I think the idea of these graphs are going to help you guys understand the difference between the data. This is a air handler cooling coil valve. So it's basically a valve that opens and closes all the time. So when you look at this graph, you're looking at the 15-minute intervals. Everything looks normal. That's the way that it should look, right? But this is 15-minute intervals. So when I look at the 1-minute interval, that looks a lot different. So these are the things that we pick up that other energy management systems or building automation systems just can't detect, without really gathering that high resolution data. So here the reality is that it's cycling on and off every 3 or 4 minutes, which we said earlier that kills equipment, right? This is another example, right? So this is a VAV reheat cycle. So it's constantly on and off. So you see in the 15-minute interval, it shows a 5-degree swing. In the 1-minute interval, it shows a 25-degree swing. That's a pretty big difference. You guys ever get any hot and cold calls? Or, why is it so hot in here? Why is it so cold in here? You ever wonder why? Oh, it's because this is probably the issue right here. Very common one. So that's kind of the value. So that's the high resolution data, right? That's why we collect it in 1-minute intervals. And we collect 1-minute intervals at every single input and output point, right? So not just, excuse me, not just the ones that we think are relevant. So we're collecting it from everywhere. So out of the box smarts. So an air handler is an air handler, okay? A VAV box that we talked about, which is one of these things right here, is a VAV box. So our rules are, for the most part, either physics-based combined with rule-based or just solely physics-based. So we look at the physics of a building, and we look at where a building automation system looks at, this is where it starts, and this is the set point I want. I look at, and they just care that this set point is being met. I look at everything in the middle. And I say, well, I want this set point to be met. That is my number one priority, but what is happening in between that we can improve as far as efficiencies? So I'm analyzing from the beginning all the way to the end, every single point, and I'm running all my analytics based on pieces of equipment and physics, right? So we write all our algorithms for an air handler based on an air handler. And we see at the bottom is some of the alerts and stuff that we see for an air handler. Really small writing. So you simultaneous heating and cooling failures, and those types of things that we have down there. But the point is, it's the minute it's fully mapped and commissioned, it's operating. So there's other things out there for other EMS systems where you got to go through and you got to go rewrite all the coding and all that kind of stuff. Which is kind of the same concept as an energy management system. But the difference between a rule-based and a physics-based, in my opinion, is huge, because a rule-based equipment piece of software can't figure out the in-between. It can only figure out, well, if I do this, then I want to do that, and if I want to do this, and I do that. It can notify you when it can't meet one of those requirements, but it can't tell you exactly what's wrong in between. So continuous learning and knowledge sharing. So for every platform that we install, every customer that we install, we're gathering more data. So we're utilizing that data, whether you call it artificial intelligence, predictive learning, whatever you want to call it, we're learning from all the data that we're collecting. We also learn from a lot of our commissioning agent partners that we have, national labs, Berkeley National Labs, we have a close relationship with, EPRI, different types of research organizations. And we also have people who actually resell our products and services as well. So they're giving us ideas and stuff like that, different things that they'd like to see in our platform as well. So when I say it's continuously learning, it's by itself continuously learning, but we also have a lot of partners and things like that, to say, hey, well, what if you looked at it this way, or what if you did that, or I'd like to see this. We take all that in-house, and we could turn those things around relatively quickly. So knowledge sharing to another level. So this is another air handler. So I don't want to get overly complicated, but this is one we haven't seen before. So we had to rewrite our analytics and our algorithms a little bit around this because it has a bunch of different functionality in it that we hadn't seen in a different one. It actually has is actually collecting outside air from 2 different locations instead of 1, and it has its own built-in humidifier. But we have now updated our algorithms and updated our analytics. And now the next time we come across an air handler that looks exactly like this one, we came across this one about a month ago. The next time we come across it, it's already out of the box. We already got it. So once we've done it once, it's across the entire platform that we've made those changes. And we update the firmware, we update everything at all of our customer locations, and it's continuously learning. So that's another good example. So we've talked about a lot of these, but these are the typical findings. And then at the bottom there, you'll see is a case study from the Thatcher building, which is one of the older buildings there at Pomona College. They actually originally came to us and said, I don't want to touch this building. It's really old. The equipment is old. It really just needs a rehaul in order for anything to be improved from an energy management perspective. Eventually they said, you know what, just go ahead and do it. Let's see what happens. And, we identified a crazy amount of issues with it. And there are some things that need to be replaced, like sensors and things like that are broken. But this was just one thing that we replaced, and we've not replaced, but fixed as far as a change of sequence of operations. And we identified about 40% energy savings, energy reduction in that building. I shouldn't say savings because they're not correlated, but it was a 40% energy reduction, which is a huge number. And we're averaging somewhere around 20% per building. That doesn't mean every building is going to see 20%, but at the cost that you pay us, if you get a 3 or 4% return, within the first year, you're going to be paying for our products and services for the most part. So I don't want to go through all those technical things, but there's typical findings that we find. So what do you want to take away from this? This is the slide where we kind of give you the big summary. It's faster. Okay, so once I plug in my device, I'm going to be able to tell you, what some of those anomalies are within weeks, instead of that whole process that I talked about, where you got to go through that whole cycle. It's going to take 4 to 6 months until you even know what's wrong. It's exhaustive. So where if somebody wanted to come through and commission this building, they would have to check. They would spot check these VAV boxes. They would spot check certain pieces of equipment because it's too much labor and it's too much work to check them all. We're going to check them all, and we're going to do it, within a matter of weeks, and it's easy for us. Focused. So when I give you a list of things that we need to improve on, I could tell you exactly, what's the first thing we should focus on first? Kind of like that Thatcher building. We identified a lot of things wrong with that building, but that one change of sequence of operations made the biggest impact. So we focused on that first, and we took care of it first. And we don't want you guys wasting your money on things that are going to be, a 5, 6, 7 year payback, when you guys can be spending stuff where it's a 3 to 7 month payback, much faster, quicker. Low cost. So we talked about it a little bit. ROI for the most part in almost every case, every customer I've worked with has been less than a year, which is amazing when you start talking about energy efficiency. Traditionally we call that the low hanging fruit, right? Or the slam dunk projects. Accurate and verifiable. So through our platform, we do measurement and verification. We have all the details. We have all the high resolution data. So for us to run a measurement and verification report, which is basically comparing what was it before and what is it now after you've done your fixed something or changed something, I can show you exactly the detail of what those are and what how much impact that made to your building's usage and stuff. And persistent savings. So I'm not just saying, we're going to save you this thing one time. I mean, it's persistent. It's going to be something that you're going to be saving time and time again every month on your utility bills. If I save you $1,500 a month, that's $1,500 every month that you're going to be saving, because we're going to continuously monitor all that data and all your equipment to make sure that if anything changes, we alert and we can let you know right away. But as far as that's my presentation. So for that, I'll open it up to questions and conversations and see where we go from there. Carl.
Couple of questions.
Absolutely.
The systems that you're talking about, right, you're right now thinking about this particular building as far as any sort of implementation is concerned, is that correct?
Was it this building or the community, is the same building? Yeah.
It would possibly apply to all the buildings except 1, 3, and 4 clubhouses because the EMS systems are not fully implemented in those 3 locations currently.
Okay, so under the circumstances right now, there would have to be a cost-benefit analysis done, okay, to determine whether or not the fee that you charge us, okay, is actually going to capture back whatever specific savings we have from energy savings. The other thing right now is, do you specialize with specifically chilled water units, or are you only doing, or are you doing ducted systems also?
No, we have all kinds of systems on our platform. So whether it be a chilled water system or whether it be rooftop units, even we have customers that communicate as low as just a smart thermostat in some of their smaller buildings. So sometimes we have to come in and upgrade the thermostat from one of the older thermostats to a smart thermostat, but they're relatively inexpensive. They're like less than $100 and probably another $100 to have installed. But they're simple. I installed my own at my house. It's not overly complicated, and I'm by no means an engineer.
Well, since we just got the HVAC done in this building, most of our thermostats now are smart thermostats. I
Awesome. Yeah, so we would connect, obviously as long as we can connect to their Wi-Fi signal and those types of things, we should be able to talk to them.
And your infrastructure right now to connect into us, okay, is minimal, or you would have, you talk about that device there, is that plugged into something, like you plug into that thing in your car where the insurance company monitors you, or is it something that would require some specific additional equipment that you'd have to install?
Yeah, so we install this on the same subnet as your energy management system. So it's relatively easy for the actual install itself, as you're literally plugging it into your standard 110 outlet, which is this little guy here, and then you're running a Cat 6 cable from your switch to this guy, and it can sit on the top, just like it sits on the table here today, or we can have it mounted, depending on, its bigger brother actually has its own box, so if it has to, for some reason, go outside or something like that, we can put it in a box where it's weatherproofed and all that kind of stuff. But it's a 15-minute installation, and we work with your IT team to, basically configure the rest of it on our end. So from a labor perspective, it's plug and
minimal.
play. Very,
It's
very
plug and
minimal.
play. Okay, so there's no really additional equipment that would have to be installed here.
Yeah,
It's
it'd
just a
be
matter of-
like your home router. Probably the same complications as your home router, except you don't have to deal with it. It would be me dealing with your provider to configure it correctly.
Understood. Thanks.
So Matt, it might be beneficial if you could give some examples of current installations and customers that you have, the size of those customers, the amount of money that they were spending on electricity annually, what kind of benefits they saw in reduction of costs.
Well,
In a general sense, not to give anybody's
can I?
information away, but we're very familiar with our infrastructure here, at least the people who sit here. We know the buildings, we have some idea. GRF spends $1 million a year in electricity. This building is the one that consumes the most
Sure.
of the electricity, and then they go down clubhouse by clubhouse. So that might give everyone here a better sense of understanding practical applications and what's
Absolutely.
been achieved.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we're on average in the buildings that we have installed our platform, we're looking at, it's a high number, and it seems like almost unrealistic. And sometimes if I didn't know the results of it, I wouldn't believe it myself. But we've been averaging at roughly about a 20% reduction in energy usage. And that's not just in energy usage, it's also in demand charges, as we kind of talked about earlier. So it's a pretty big difference. So here, what you see on your screen now is actually our actual measurement and verification report. comparing 2018 to 2019, same time period. It's a 3-month period that we took. This is using what we call weatherized data. So it's basically taking temperature, humidity, temperature patterns. So it doesn't just take into consideration that it was a 90-degree day. It'll actually take into consideration, was it 3 90-degree days in a row, or was it just a spot 90-degree day? So we actually look at temperature patterns, humidity, and those types of things. So we use all that and calculate it to the best we can to make sure we're comparing apples to apples in our measurement and verification reports. And these are all automated and available on our platform, and you can run them at any time with any part of your platform, any part of any building that we have underneath our services. So you see here, this was that Thatcher building that I referenced earlier. And I reference Pomona a lot because they've given us permission to share their data with other people, where I don't have that permission with other customers. But we work with Yamaha, JCPenney, Harvey Mudd, a number of UCI. We work with a number of high-end class customers, that you would recognize. So it's not just, ABC shops and stuff like that. We have a pretty good pedigree of customers that we work with. But here you see there's an average 42% reduction in kilowatt hours, along with a 32% reduction in kilowatt usage. And the kilowatt usage is almost more impactful than the kilowatt hour usage in most cases. And then we even go through all the data, which I'm not going to waste time on. But at the bottom of the page here, it'll even tell you. So some of the things are missing here. I'm not sure why it didn't come up the right way. But this is during hot weather, and this is during cold weather. So one of these alerts came up when I opened this thing. I'm not sure why, but so you can see the difference. So it'll tell you, it's a 40% reduction when it's hot outside, but it's only a 37% reduction when it's cooler outside.
I think I've got
Are these
Richard
numbers
first. Hold on,
sorry.
I've got Richard first and then
Okay.
Bill.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, have you looked at the EMC system in this building?
I have not looked at the system itself. Steve gave me some very early information on it, but I do know that it's a BACnet compatible system in which that allows us to be able to speak with it. So it means now with that being a BACnet protocol, it's something that my gateway would easily plug and play and talk to.
Well, the difficulty in this community is we have a lot of different systems. We have VAV and maybe 2 buildings, and the rest are packaged. So how do you handle the VAV and the package systems simultaneously?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we call it mapping. So we can actually bring, I don't care if it's a Schneider, Honeywell, JCI, it doesn't matter. If I talk to it via my gateway, I convert it to I'll call it my Melrock language. That way, if I'm comparing a VAV box in this building to a VAV box on the other side of the community, they're comparing apples to apples. So you're seeing the same thing. I can speak to the RTU controllers a lot of the times. I can speak to the smart thermostat. I can connect at a lot of different levels for a lot of the smaller buildings. So there's a lot of different ways I could talk to the equipment and get the data that's available to us.
Well, I'm concerned now. In this building, we have an EMS system. It's not fully operational. They're still converting to our new air conditioning system. But what concerns me is, do we have to replace all the equipment in this building?
No, that's the beauty of our platform is you don't have to replace it with anything. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the existing equipment that you've already purchased, you've already invested in, and I'm making it smarter, and I'm enhancing it. And I'm bringing more data that your energy management system or your building automation system can gather, and I'm gathering all that data, and I'm sending it to my cloud, and I'm running all my analytics and reporting stuff on it.
So you're monitoring every VAV box?
Every single one.
I'm not familiar with the system here,
Sure.
but I'm concerned about how effective it would be. Now, this building was set up where they have the heating and cooling, and they're fighting each other. That's why this building.
Simultaneous heating and cooling. See it in
Yeah.
over 70% of the buildings. Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's why we we had to put in new equipment anyway, but this was a good excuse to do it because we're getting a tremendous amount of wasted energy fighting each other.
Absolutely. Yep, we identify that all the time.
So what can you do to this building to improve the quality?
It goes back actually to one of Carl's questions, right? So one of the challenges that we have is I can't tell you what's wrong with your building. I don't know what's wrong with it. And I won't know what's wrong with it until I plug my platform in. But I can say we've commissioned a brand new chiller over at Pomona College, which was recently commissioned within the last 6 months. And we've identified that that chiller, a $200,000 investment, was cycling and running on and off. And then once we told the manufacturer, basically through Pomona College, they told the manufacturer, like, it's not supposed to be doing this. The manufacturer came back and said, I will not warranty that product because it's not supposed to run that way. So we actually had to help them identify the issue as to why it was doing that. But at the end of the day, I know that there's things that we can help with you guys. And if there's not, then it gives you peace of mind. And, we don't have any contracts. We're a month-by-month, company. So once we've installed our platform, there's no commitment for you guys to keep us. We're a really low-cost investment, which kind of helps, drive our business. And we, that's why we're starting with one building, why we start with this one. And we'll show the value. That's why we're only doing it in one building, and we'll show you guys the value. And then if you guys don't, then you just cancel our agreement. 30 days notice, and we're done.
Well, how long would it take to evaluate this building then?
Less than a month. So it's, within a couple of weeks, and once we get our gateway installed and fully mapped, configured.
So I'd like to make a couple of comments before I go to Bill. Several of you on the dais have been more involved in GRF energy issues than I have, right? I mean, I only came about 6 years ago, originally as an advisor to GRF Energy. And the EMS systems and the funding started, stopped, technology changed, and over a vast number of years, it didn't get fully implemented, and then it had to be reconfigured. And my understanding is that we're now at a point where we have an operational EMS system in all the GRF facilities with the exception of 1, 3, and 4 clubhouses, because 1 is going to either undergo a massive renovation or replacement. I don't want to be controversial, and PAC has money already allocated to the replacement of the HVAC systems and the safety issues. We just had that task force meeting in this room last week. And Clubhouse 4 is also not up and fully operational on the EMS because there are concerns there about what we're going to do for the long run of the rehab of that building. However, the rest of our facilities do have operational EMS systems. The issue, as I understand it, is that we're not operating the EMS. We got it up, we got it running, it's all computerized, it's going through IT, through Chuck Holland, but we don't have a department that monitors and fine-tunes all of this. And I remember years ago, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he was like the chief engineer here. He has since retired and left. And in a conversation I had with him when JCI was here looking at all the GRF buildings, he said, the EMS is not complete. It's dysfunctional. You have different systems on different protocols. And if it would be put together and then supervised and run properly, you guys could save a lot of money on the energy. I think we're at a situation now, at a point now for GRF. This really doesn't apply to the mutuals because the mutuals have common area electricity and it's a different system. But for GRF, with all these facilities and all the different HVAC and heating and cooling and lighting systems, we've spent all this money, and we'll continue to spend money because they're reserved items, right? We have a system that we're not using. So what do? Do you hire people and create a department for the energy management system, and somebody watches the screens every day and does this and fine tunes and sends protocol information and says, turn that thermostat up, turn that thermostat down, stop this chiller from cycling, stop this, real-time monitoring? Or do you automate the process, right? And I kind of liken it to an automobile. Before we had computers, you had to tune every one of the systems in the automobile to get it to run as efficiently as you could. But once you started driving it again, the conditions of the engine change, right? The oil, the spark plugs, the carburetors, the airflow mixture, whatever. And as we made cars more complex, and we started instituting catalytic converters and fuel injection rather than carburetors, now the automobiles have computers that monitor all of the systems within the car, and the outside temperature, the inside temperature, the engine temperature, the exhaust temperature at multiple points, the fuel delivery, the temperature, and all these things, so the cars run more efficiently all the time. And they're collecting data points at hundreds, if not thousands of times a second, right? So I liken our EMS system to be like an automobile. We don't have anybody running the EMS system, and GRF spends in the 2019 budget over $1 million for electricity. And this building is the largest consumer of that at about 20%, I think 20 to 25%. So we've spent, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last decade getting reports and analysis about what we should be doing for our energy needs for running systems, and then starting on a path of installing energy management, and then another board would come along and no longer fund it, so it would stop in place. So some buildings had equipment and other buildings didn't, and then they started again, and the other buildings would get different equipment. And then when Brad Hudson came in here a few years ago, he tasked Chuck Holland with get it up, get it running, get it consistent, get it good to go. I believe we're at the point now where we're good to go. We're just not going. We've got a rocket ship on the launch pad, and we've got nobody in the control room to launch it. So this, to me, was the most important consideration. When Bert invited me, when you told me about this presentation from this company, I wanted to go and hear what the concept was, not necessarily about the company or the general, how are automated EMS systems now working by collecting data, sending it to the cloud, so you don't have to have the data retention on premises, although their boxes do 4 gigabytes, whatever that is, but depending on the frequency of your data sampling and how many points you're sampling, if it's 3 to 6 months or whatever the case may be. But then their application of artificial intelligence with computers to be constantly monitoring all these data inputs and then being able to redirect the systems within the building to run at the most efficient manner. Everything in our society goes this way now. Autonomous driving will come, right? Tesla has their driving protocols and whatever, and it'll get smarter and smarter every day. All our automobiles now, if you buy a new automobile, if it's a plug-in hybrid or a hydrogen car or an electric car, they all communicate the data from your driving habits back to the manufacturers for their analysis so that they can improve their future product. We're at that point in time where we need to do something about the EMS for GRF. And whether or not this system is the applicable system, we don't know. But I thought that it was important to have someone come in and explain what the technology is, how it works in a general sense, and not so much that it's a sales presentation from anyone. Because if GRF the board would decide to pursue something like this, it would have to be funded, right? And it would have to go out for RFP. So again, this task force should be listening to about what is it that we now know that we didn't know before this meeting started, and how could it positively affect GRF? I mean, if you're talking about saving, pick a number, even 20% of the electric bill of $1 million a year, what is the cost of that? I don't know. I'm not really prepared to ask Matt about all of those fine points of how the financing work, because that's not really the purpose of the meeting today. It's an educational meeting. Bill?
Yeah, Matt, in your slide here where you showed I think the one building with the 40% in different times of the year, summer versus winter? Yeah. Is that a building that's in Southern California? I mean, in other words, can I look at apples and apples? In other words, pretty much the same climate situation?
Yep, in Claremont,
Oh, okay.
California.
Speaking of Claremont, would it be possible for people at some point in time to go talk to some of these people?
Absolutely.
If you could make a contact so we could go, we kind of live in a community that's dedicated to show me,
Sure, absolutely.
And, so people would probably be very interested to get it from the horse's mouth that, they really are saving money with this system.
Absolutely.
The third thing that I would be concerned about with subnets, they can be hacked. And I know on one of your first slides, you talked about double encryption and keeping them safe from the amount of massive intrusion that we are getting into our computer systems in this country.
Sure.
You feel pretty secure? Have you had any problems in that area?
Yeah, no, we are, so our director of engineering actually comes from a McAfee. So, McAfee is the one that most people download as their antivirus on their computers. So he's the one that's actually designed our dual encryption and our built-in firewall. We've been tested by Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies like Walmart and Macy's and JCPenney and all them, and they've all signed off on the security of our equipment. We're in talks with the Navy with them, so they've looked into it as well. Although that solution may be a little bit different considering it's our Navy, but they're pretty impressed with our security as well.
Okay. So how invasive? I don't want to be a negative word.
No, it's fine.
How invasive is your software into the EMS system? I mean, is it? It's not at all.
No.
It's just
Yeah, well, I can't say none. Limited, very limited.
very limited.
Yeah.
So
So basically, you're putting your mail in the mailbox every day anyway. All I'm doing is going and taking a look and then putting it back. I mean, that's the easiest way I can compare it. It's it does take the slightest bit of memory on there because we are reading the data in 1 minute, but we're not asking it to record it or anything. It's already recording that data. So we're basically just taking a snapshot of it, sending it up to the cloud.
So all those data points that you're looking at, that you showed us that our EMS system is probably not looking at,
Right.
that data is there, it's just not being utilized by the EMS system?
Correct.
And
It's
so
not
your
trend, they call it
yours-
trending. Yeah, so it's not
Okay,
trending.
and so your system's going to look at that data to make some decisions?
Absolutely.
To fine tune things?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Want to go to Bert?
The July bill for this building, I took a look at it, I can't remember the number, but I think the man charges ran something like 57% or higher.
Bert, can you use your mic, please?
Sorry, the demand charges for this building ran something like 57% or higher. And We know that right now, SCE is monitoring the demand on a meter every 15 minutes.
Correct.
You're sampling a lot faster, and you could take a look at the integral of that usage of time, or usage of energy over that time period. Do you have that ability of actually predicting and shedding load during a 15-minute period to try to bring the demand charge down?
We do. Yeah, we do. So our platform offers two-way communications. That's how we do our automated demand response. That would require a lot more engineering and a lot more, it's not completely automated, I'll put it that way. But we do that, and we are doing that with like Amgen, for example. They're up in Thousand Oaks area. So we do that as far as like demand management and automated demand response. Not sure it's something that we would look at first. I would recommend installing the platform, making the buildings much more efficient, finding the lower hanging fruit first, and then if that's something that we wanted to look at down the road, I think it would be a better next step to do that later than earlier, because then we would have a lot more data to be able to run that on as well.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Richard and then
Yeah, so
Carl.
talking about demand charges, I know this group was thinking that that's the answer, watching the demand charge and changing the time period. Well, I talked to somebody in our finance department here who's responsible for looking at Edison bills. He says, whatever you do, you're still going to have a demand charge. There's no way, because Edison keeps changing the time frame that they're measuring you. So there's no way of even eliminating the demand charge. You may be able to reduce it somewhat, but not significantly. So what's the answer there?
Yeah, I don't think you can eliminate demand charges. I know you guys put solar on this building?
No. GRF has no solar.
GRF is no solar. The only way to really look at it, and if you really want to defer demand charges, I would say would be energy storage would be the only other option that I can think of that would be viable. But even that, the payback on it is not, it's not the best. I think, there's an order of operations that comes straight from the state of California that says the first thing you need to look at is energy efficiency. So how do you make your building as efficient as possible and lower demand charges through projects like this, upgrading your equipment, changing your light bulbs, adding VFDs to certain pieces of equipment. And then you look at demand response. How much can you participate in demand response? They only call on you like 15 days a year to participate in demand response. We can automate that process with our platform. And then you start to look at renewables. And, that would be solar and energy storage. And if you did them, I would do them in a combination of both. But it's a process. So it's not something I can say that you could just look at as just one solution. I would say it's something that you would have to evaluate over time. But I think you need to start in the beginning. You need to, honestly, what our platform provides is the infrastructure and the data to be able to support what you want to do. Now, if you want to look at solar in this building or you want to look at energy storage, now you have a profile that we can look at. We can run, simulations and things like that. So what if I did have a, 50 kilowatt solar panel on the roof here? What would the impact be? We can run those simulations now that we have all the data. What if I wanted to run it and wanted to, mess with my HVAC? What if I went from 74 to 76 degrees or 76 to 78 degrees? What if we changed our set points from 74 to 78 degrees? How much money would we save, and how much power could we reduce as far as a demand response program? What if we turned off the lights in this building? We can run all those reports, but you need to have the infrastructure in place to be able to do it. And I think that that's one of the true values that our platform brings. Outside of energy savings is really it's the framework that you guys need in order to build your goals and your energy mission. Like, where do you want to get to? You want to get to zero net energy? If that's something that you guys really want to do, then how do you want to do it? You can't do it without all the data. It's just not possible.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Just maybe just some clarification, because I want to make sure that that point is not lost. What is being offered here is an analysis tool. It's a tool to gather information. this is a multifaceted problem to save energy in your buildings. One, it requires you to find out what it is that you need to do, and that's the part that this company offers, the ability to understand what things you can do to fine-tune your building. That's the first step. Second step is to actually have somebody monitor it on a regular basis to see if there's a delta from the time that you find out what you need to do and the time that you actually did it, and see what that delta difference is in your savings. The other critical part that it's important for you to understand is that he's not offering to do what needs to be done. He's offering to provide you all the information relative to the system so that you can actually do that second part, which is the actually do part. That is the expensive part. That's the part where you need a contractor, you need a building engineer, and you need the resources to be able to do that. It's a worthwhile. I think that if you're going to go down this path, it's important for you, as Director Randazzo said, to have a clear return on investment upfront. And that doesn't only include buying the box that will be pulling out the information for you so you can do the analysis. It actually looks at the whole cost savings relative to gathering the analysis and doing the work so you can actually catch in those savings. So that's one point I wanted to make, is I think that that's important, that you don't lose track of that. The other thing that I wanted to point out relative to demand charges, as Matt clearly responded, and I think it's a very good response. You want to manage your demand charges? Get storage. Because how you manage your demand charge has to do with how you manage your energy curve, okay? Do you use energy now or you use energy later? One way to clearly do that is to store your energy so you can use it when it's cheaper to use. Absent that, I'm not sure that there's anything that Melrock could do for you relative to the demand charges. And I think that Matt was fairly clear on that. He'll gather all the data for you so you can figure out what that looks like if you're going to go down that path.
Just to be clear, there are certain things we could do as far as automating set points, checking, cycling certain, the fans on the air handler units, and I'm drawing a blank on what they're called. But anyway, we can basically cycle the compressors and things like that are going. I mean, there are ways that we can actually control the demand charge to some extent while still maintaining a threshold on the set point and automate that process. So there are things we can do. And then to the first point where you said, yes, so do we just provide the data and everything? That's correct. But at the same time, we also do help with a lot of the changes in the energy savings before we have to bring in a third party. So around scheduling, looking at schedules, looking at when equipment is running and when it's not running, operational changes, those types of things. We could do some changes of sequence of operations in-house. So some of that stuff is something that we are capable of. But as an example, with Pomona College, where it would have cost them about $75,000 to $80,000 to have their building commissioned by a third-party company, it cost them $17,000 through our platform, because our platform came out and said, this is what I want you to fix right here, this piece. I want you to change this sequence of operations, and I don't want to change. I want you to change it to this. So we gave them all the data for that change, and then they went in there and they made that change, and that reduced their cost to about 35% of what the original cost would be. So using our platform is capable of a lot, but to your point, there are some things that are out of our capability where we do need to bring in third parties, and they do add additional costs. But the point is, you know exactly what those costs are going to be going into those projects.
So just to make clear, so the group understands this, do you control the optimization of the system?
We are capable of doing that, yes.
You're capable of doing it, but that's not part of the package that you're offering, right?
I would happily offer that part of the package.
Oh, okay. So there'll be an additional cost. Programming work, would you be doing the programming work to?
I mean, it's one of those things where I don't know what I don't know, right? So I can't really tell you exactly what the best direction is because I haven't seen the data on your building yet.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you get a clear picture.
I don't know
a
what
clear
issues
picture
are
of
out
what,
there.
what's being provided. So there's programming work required for this. You would need to find out what that cost is as well, so you can do a good evaluation on what you're being talked about. Field checks and repairs, you guys do that? That'll be a third
We do
party,
it
right?
virtually, yeah. So we do everything virtually. So when we see a piece of equipment that's not operating correctly, we tag it and we send a notification. So those would be in your alerts or notifications.
But you don't come out to the field to look at that piece of equipment
I
and
don't
do the
need to
repairs?
because I already know what's wrong with it.
Well, no, you do need to. Before you repair any piece of equipment, you actually need to go look at it. I mean, you can tell me, it looks like the filters need to be changed. It needs to recycling too often.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, you're gonna have to pay somebody to come out, look at it, and tell you if that is correct. Because this is just information that it's gathering from the EMS. So it's not ultimately the repair ticket.
I will actually say, so there are different parts of our alerts tickets. One, where we call them issues, they are 100% accurate. So we have yet to come across one that is not 100% accurate. And the others are, we call them investigative tickets. It means we know that there's something wrong, but we don't know exactly what's wrong with it, and it requires somebody to go in there and actually find out. So it just kind of depends on what that issue is.
So hold on. The other thing that I wanted to add before I go to Carl and then to Bill is that your company offers a subscription service. This is a monthly subscription service. This is not something you buy that's front-end heavily loaded.
Yeah, which means we're not going anywhere, and we're partnering with you to help you find the problem. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, I
So,
think that's the plan.
and this has been underway for some number of years now in many services. You used to buy Microsoft Office for your computer for $400. Now you subscribe to Office 365. You used to buy Adobe Photoshop if you were an artist or a photographer. You now subscribe to a monthly service. This gives you the opportunity not to have the front-end cost and to have to continually buy upgrades or whatever it is. If another product or service comes along that you think is going to be more beneficial to you, you can move from one service to the other without having to say, oh, but we have all this front-end investment. So I just wanted to make that clear as well. So then we were going to go to Carl and to Bill. Thank you.
Well, part of my question was sort of taken over by Ernesto because that was one of my questions. It's more of a passive thing rather than an active thing, your particular service, whereby you're denoting what particular issues are going on within the system by collecting the data from that particular thing. And then you would then tell whomever the fact that that valve needs to get whatever, or that particular filter needs to get changed, or whatever needs to get done to this particular system. The active role would be done by, let's say if we had a building engineer on staff here, that would basically go from clubhouse to clubhouse and what have you. Do we have a building engineer on staff here?
No, we do not.
Okay, so right now, any of the specific HVAC things are done by
We
people pressing in the
we
hallway?
would get contracted out. We can do very rudimentary, upgrades or changes to our systems, but anything other than that, we will farm it out.
So right now, the fine tuning of this system is being done by the contractor who installed it. Is that
It's
correct?
actually being done by a commissioning firm.
Okay. So at this particular point in time, okay, you've got a service right now that's passive. It could be, and it's somewhat active, as you indicated, okay, but mostly passive to collect data, which is a good thing because a lot of people are not collecting this data. So by collecting this data, we can fine tune things, but then we would have to either hire or get somebody on staff to do those particular things that need to get done. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, to
Right.
some extent, yeah.
So that's what I was trying to figure out here. Okay, now you said we could probably get information if you came on board with us. Okay, you can get information to us within a month or what have you to see where we had some issues and where we need to get up and running on certain areas or certain things are not working right or what have you. Okay, is that correct? So within a 2-month time frame, we could have a tick list of items that, a punch list of items that need to get done to make us more efficient. And then it would only be the monitoring of those particular things to make sure that it's continuing to be efficient.
Correct.
And then your service would then see whether or not it was continuing to be efficient, and if there was some sort of a red light that comes on or some sort of a thing on your monitor that says, hey, we got another problem here, then you would then tell us that, and then we would have to either hire somebody or have somebody on staff or whatever to go out and do that particular thing.
Correct, yeah, and you would also know the impact of,
And
you
since
know,
we're only gonna, we can go month to month, then we could get you for 2 months, let's say hypothetically, I'm just, throwing things out in the air right now, to do your analysis and determine whether or not we do have any particular issues.
Sure.
And then we could utilize that punch list to solve some of those problems.
Absolutely.
At least in the interim.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bill?
My questions are going to be kind of like Carl's here. I guess basically, our energy management system isn't capable of getting all of these, all of these points of information. So basically, we could do this, as Carl suggested, have you come in, look at it for a month. I don't know how long it would take you to I'll use your term, recommission the building to get it back to where it's supposed to be, because it's not there, I'm pretty sure. It's never been done. I'm hearing Carl suggest that maybe, okay, we bring you in, get that point done, and then you go away. We don't hire you anymore. But then we don't have an energy management system that's looking at all these data points, and we start going the other way again. And do you come in can you come in for 2 months at a time and then go away for 6 months?
I mean,
It doesn't make sense
It's
to me.
not my optimal
Of course not.
relationship, you know what I mean? My gut says that once we've generated the first report of, hey, and we come out and we say, hey, this is what we found. My gut is saying you won't want to cancel, right? And
Right.
that's what I would like to see. But is it capable? Do we have long-term contracts? No, we don't. We do usually wind up, we do have installation costs where this device costs us money and it costs us labor hours in order for us to map and configure your system. So we do expect to be compensated for the installation piece of it along with the first couple months. And a lot of the times we can roll that into like the first 6 months worth of payments and stuff like that. So there is no upfront cost. But at the same time, my goal would be to create a partnership with you guys, not so much hey, here's your report, we'll see you later kind of thing. But absolutely, you guys, at any time, if you're not happy with our services, we're not a type of company that wants to stick around and bleed your money. We have the intention of not having any contracts with that same purpose that we want to prove our value to you as a partner.
Right, so it would behoove the GRF board to, if we're going to have you come in here and do this, it would behoove us to go out and find an engineering service that could take the data and actually physically go to these devices and fix things as they needed. To have you come in here and collect data without having the next step of having a human being that knows what they're doing with a building
Absolutely.
like this. So it's going to be to do the complete package. We have to be ready to take the data that you're providing and do something with it. Back to a question I asked you earlier, how invasive. You had said that you just read the data and take it back, but then I heard in the conversation here that you actually can go through BACnet or whatever the protocol is, and actually go to a device in the building and make an adjustment within some limitation that you have with your software. But you're actually doing proactive work. You're not only monitoring, but you're managing at some point.
We do have that capabilities, and like I said earlier, it's baby steps, right?
Okay.
In my process, it's kind of like I walked you through energy efficiency to demand response to renewables, right? It's the same with our platform, right? The first step is to get installed, identify what we call the low-hanging fruit, operational efficiencies, those types of changes where we can change schedules and do those types of things where we can save you money in a heartbeat, right? And then we move to the next step where we start looking at the equipment and we start saying, okay, well, these These are easy changes of sequence of operations. And then also to extend on that, we do have partners that we work with that can come out and do, change the sensors, fix a damper, or, change sequence of operations. We work with a lot of companies that do that, and we're happy to bundle a contract together, or to some extent, so that you guys have those resources behind you to take action on that data. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like this second, but that capability, and we do that with some customers. That is available. So we can help at whatever level you guys want us to help, just depending on, what you're looking for. What are your goals? Do you have a budget? Or, do you have an energy reduction goal that you want to hit between now and a certain time period? The idea would be to put a plan together and say, I want to reduce 5% or 10% of my energy by the end of the year with a budget of 50 grand or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing numbers out there, right? And then we can take that and we can put an action and put a plan together. Now we have the data to support it and say, okay, well, here's the data from our platform. Here's the things we can work on, and then here's how we can attain that goal, right? But it's really, like I said, it's at whatever level you want us to partner with you. We can go all-in partner, where we bring in some of our other partners to help with fixing the issues and adjusting the problems. Or we can just provide the data, or we can provide the data and give our engineering services and our recommendations to say, hey, well, here's all the data. This is what we found on our platform. Here's the top 5 things I would work on this quarter, right? And then every quarter we can come out and say, here's the top 5 things I'd work on this next quarter. Okay, we've solved that. Here's the measurement and verification report on those 5 things you did over the last 3 months. This is what the actual results were. This is what we thought they were going to be.
Okay. Did you partner this way with Pomona College?
Absolutely.
At what level did you partner with them?
We are heavy consultants with them. So they have a lot of their own in-house engineers and stuff like that. But we're heavy consultants with them. We actually help them with the same way. Like, we identify, hey, these are what you should work on. Now we're tied in totally to their work order system, and they understand our platform better. So we're less involved than we were before. But we've helped them with changes of sequence of operations. We've actually hired commissioning agents on their behalf, where we've said, hey, Mr. Commissioning Agent, I want you to fix just this, and I want you to change it from this to this. And then they've come out and done the work. Again, a lot less expensive than had a commissioning agent had to come out and do all the work. So we've been pretty hands-on with them, but we haven't officially done any of the work because they actually have the resources there to be able to do that.
All right, thank you.
So
Versus
I'd like to
so
say
sorry, just to
2 things.
reiterate,
Okay.
like Yamaha is kind of the other way, where they actually have a partner that they already work with. So we actually communicate with their partner, their engineering firm that they've contracted. So we work directly with the engineering firm and the customer. The 3 of us go sit at a table. We identify what the issues are. We walk through them. The engineering firm then gets the approval from Yamaha, and the engineering firm then go ahead and fixes the issues and problems.
So I want to say a couple of things, and then I want to call on Bert and Richard again. We're also getting close to the lunch hour, so.
My time is yours.
2 things I want to say is, at the towers, they have their own staff. They have their own building engineer. They have their own EMS system, which they've recently completed all their upgrades on. And their staff is going through training to operate that EMS system. But they have the staff to do it. They have a building engineer. They have employees that fix things in the building. Yes, they have some outside contractors. That's an application where, it was acknowledged, installed, now training will occur, and it will be operated by on-site staff. We don't have that on-site staff. We did have a building engineer many years ago who retired. He wasn't necessarily always used in a building engineering as an engineer. He was sometimes used more to replace a pump or do a thing, or, more as a laborer. But we don't have that here. We don't have that in GRF. We don't have that staff. We rely on going out to RFP for major HVAC things and even maintenance issues where we don't have the personnel to do that. United and Third have both installed solar, as we know, and neither one of the mutuals nor VMS maintains those systems. Each one of the mutuals has an O&M contract with an outside company, and they monitor the production. It's in the cloud, it's software, it's called the Locus system, and when things go wonky, whether an entire site goes down or an inverter goes down, or an alert by an email goes out to the company that you have a contract with, and also the staff, and an alert is done, and then somebody has to go out and figure out what it is. So you have a response time. Sometimes responses can be made through communication protocols. Sometimes it demands that someone actually go out to the building or the location and look at the plant and say, yeah, it's down. Now, all 7 inverters are down. The meter isn't spinning. What's going on? Then you got to get somebody to come out and do it. The equipment has a warranty on it, right? The solar panels have a warranty, the inverters have a warranty. But if something needs to be fixed or replaced, we don't do it. VMS doesn't do it. We have an outside contractor come in and do that work. Same kind of thing. So what I draw a parallel to here is with this EMS in the cloud, it's the same kind of service, right? Somebody's collecting the data, it's going someplace, somebody's monitoring the data, and when something goes wrong, there's a response. You could also use that data to fine-tune and improve your systems. If you chose to do that, you could either have staff do that in-house, or you could have a contract with a service, someone like this, or another company, or whatever it is. But the critical part for me here is starting to collect the data and starting to do something. We spent a hell of a lot of money on EMS, right? We spent a hell of a lot of money replacing all of the LED lighting in this building, right? And we just spent a lot of money redoing the HVAC system and getting the EMS system up to control. Is the EMS working as efficiently as it should be working? I don't know. And to me, that needs further investigation, whether it's through Matt's company or through somebody else. So I'm going to go to Bert, and then I'm going to go to Richard, and then a couple of people want to speak from the floor.
Well, Steve covered a lot of what I want to say. When I buy a new car, okay, today the computer in that car basically is informing me when things aren't working right, okay? But I have a warranty, okay? Now, I don't know what the warranty is for our HVACs, but we're putting in a lot of new HVACs. Is it 1 year? Is it 5 years? Because
It varies, it varies.
yeah, because until at least at that point, if we know the data and things are not working as we had paid for them to work,
Right.
okay, we could turn back to the vendor or the equipment manufacturer and say, fix it.
Yeah, and we do have that ability, and I think it's just, what you said, Steve, is a great segue, if I would, real quick, just take a minute. We are using the EMS system that we have, not to the extent that they would monitor it. We use it when there is a problem, mostly. You know, when somebody calls us, says, it's hot as hell here.
Hard failure.
Okay? So we get on the computer and we look at the set points and see what's happening, and then we deploy somebody, whether it's an in-house staff or, so it's being used to that extent, but not to the sophisticated extent that this software draws information from it.
Staff is doing a demand response,
I think
But
to the
basically,
point,
but
though-
not the optimization.
That is.
For the best
That's a
and-
good way to put it.
Right.
But to the point, though, there's a reason it's hot here, right? It's not, it doesn't, something doesn't just change in the EMS system, something's happened, right? So in order to fix it, you need to know exactly what's wrong with it in order to
Right.
fix it, right? So Imagine having all that data ahead of time. When you get that hot call, you're like, it's hot in here, and you say, I already know that. We're already working on trying to get that fixed.
Not only that, but
Right.
you know where to go to look.
Exactly. Or
If you
you've
have
already
a-
fixed it and you
if
don't
you-
get that
If you
hot
have
call.
a contractor.
Right.
And the guy's going to come out and now he's got to troubleshoot it.
Yep.
You know that something's wrong, but you don't know where it is.
So just think about that for a second, too. How much does it cost to have a guy come out and troubleshoot a ticket?
Yeah.
$300 to $500, maybe? I'm being very.
And from my personal experience, one of the triggers for me was that I came into this building about a month ago on Saturday to pick up my mail, and the second floor was at 67 degrees. And there wasn't a single person on the second floor. Now, on the ground floor, this building needs to be recommissioned, because in the last several years, we've added the gymnasium downstairs.
Well, it's being commissioned right now because we have
Right.
a brand-new package, so.
Right. So, the upstairs gym was closed, but the table tennis room is open on the third floor during certain hours. And eventually, security is going to move in the building. So, as Matt says, you set it up one way, and then it changes this way, and then it goes this way, and it goes this way, and it's not just set it up once and walk away from it. We didn't set up the solar once and walk away from it. It requires monitoring, it requires maintenance, and we have a lot of money invested in those systems. And it, as Ernesto says, staff responds when somebody calls something in. But if somebody doesn't call and the air conditioning is on the second floor at 67 degrees from Friday at 6 p.m. after everybody has left, all of staff has left, until 9 o'clock on Monday morning, what was the point in that? If that set point had been set at 78 degrees, how much energy and demand would have been saved in those periods of times? And if you were going to have special events that occurred on the second floor, there was an emergency meeting on a Saturday, and, staff had to come in, department managers and whatever it is, and they were going to come in at Saturday at 12 o'clock, you would have something in place where you could say, crank up the AC, have it ready to go at 12 o'clock. When you walked out of the building at 4 o'clock, put it back to the set points. Yet it's an active system for optimization rather than a manual response one. I think that's one of the things Bert, you
So
can
let
finish
me
up.
just ask you, Matt. Oh, shit. What would you propose doing for us, and what do you think the cost estimated would be? Can you do that?
Yeah, so I think for this building, somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 for install setup costs, and then $150 a month probably for this building. Don't quote me on it, but that's my back of the napkin through my brain right now that you're asking me. But
How
yeah,
long would it take to take a look at this building and come back with?
weeks. No, I mean, we'd have our platform. I mean, as long as your IT group, and that's a big part of it too, right? We need your IT team on board, right? So as long as they're on board and they're willing to help us set it up, I mean, we can install it within days.
So could you come, anybody interested in a proposal?
Well, let's,
Too early?
before we get there, Richard.
Yeah, getting back to this building, well, first of all, the housing mutuals have a totally different concept for energy management because they don't have air conditioning, they don't have a lot of things. Their big problem is lighting. So we don't even include, I'm part of GRF, so I know what the differences are. But my concern is, what does it cost to tie in your device to this building?
Yeah. So probably like $2,000 to $3,000 to set up, and then $150 a month. I mean, it's for this building. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty inexpensive. And then if you wanted to, so for those cases where you think it's just lighting and they have no HVAC use, right? We could do the same thing. We can install our touch, and then we can just monitor the energy use, and that's a lot less expensive as well. That'd be like $20, $25 a month per building if just monitoring just energy and not monitoring the EMS system. So we do that with a lot of customers as well.
The lighting here was changed by staff,
No, I'm
So-
talking like more like outdoor, you've got like outdoor lighting, or you have like different like areas where the HVAC's not included, right? We couldn't monitor just the energy use of that area, so we can make sure that the lighting sensors are working, make sure your lights are turning off at night, especially now that you have peak hours between 4 and 9. That's a big difference between where it was 12 and 6. Now your outdoor lighting is actually participating in your peak, your on-peak demand charges during the summer. So if, those are big things to kind of look at. Can you wait till 9 o'clock to turn your lights on? Can you turn your lights on at 25% between now and 9 o'clock? So those are different things that we can look at as far as ways to save on those summer demand peak charges.
Yeah, your EMS system here now is not set up to monitor your lighting.
I know,
It's only
that's-
monitored for HVAC, yeah.
Yeah, but that could be a problem because the lighting is going to be a significant part of the energy consumption. But I know that motion sensors were eliminated. They was prepared to have a thermostat that controls lighting, but that was just done away with. I want to get back to the demand charge if I can.
Sure.
How can you predict when they changed the timing for establishing the energy demand charge? How can we predict? Because they can change it anytime we want, and we have
Absolutely.
no control over that.
You have no control over it. We have the tariffs actually built into our software. So most of the traditional tariffs, as long as it's not a unique one, are probably already in our software. So when they change, we just update them. So, that's really it. At the end of the day, we keep in touch with Edison. We have a great relationship with them, and basically just update our software in the rates. When they change, we change. We also have a 10 by 10 baseline too, which actually uses like predictive analytics. So that's how we use our baseline for demand response programs. So we do 10 days before on like days, right? So we actually predict the same thing that the utilities use as your baseline during demand response programs. So if you wanted to look at the 10 by 10 baseline, it'll actually give you the predictive load of how you expect. Like if you logged in right now today, it would actually show you where you are in comparison to what your last 10 days have looked like. And then it'll actually show you what the expected usage is going to look like for the rest of the day.
But there's no way of predicting when Edison's going to change the measuring time.
No, I don't think anybody can predict that. Even when I worked there, I couldn't predict it. So, it's not even Edison. A lot of it's the California Public Utility Commission. There are ways. I've known that this 4 to 9 is going to be changed for 2 years. And they've been talking about it for 2 years. So as long as you're tied in with Edison, they have biannual outlooks, right? So if you attend those outlooks, a lot of the times you can, understand what's going on, what's new, what's changed, and you can kind of stay on top of it, and I highly encourage that.
But even with storage, what good would it do if you don't know when Edison's going to change the demand?
Well, it's it's kind of a different conversation.
That's a
but
different
storage-
conversation.
Storage just gives you the capacity to have flexibility. Really, at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to.
Does that smart meter today have the capability of changing the demand time, or do they have to change out the meter? You know?
No, that's all done in-house at Edison. It has nothing to do with the meter. The meter just reads what your energy usage
Every
is.
15 minutes.
Every 15 minutes, yep.
And if they wanted to change it to 10 minutes, they could change it to 10 minutes, or 5 minutes internally, they could.
Yeah.
They can do whatever they want to do whenever
Yeah,
they
I
do it.
don't really see that
And when they
happening,
do
but,
it,
yeah.
they have to notify everyone that they've done it.
Yeah, and they have to give notice. They
Yeah,
always give
okay.
notice, but
Bill?
I don't see that happening. But it could.
Matt, maybe correct. I thought a lot of these changes had to go through the CPUC.
They all do. All the
So
rates.
it's not like they can go, tonight they decide they're going to change
Yeah, well, that's
just
what I
on
was
their
trying
own.
to say to Richard's question. I've known this 4 to 9's been coming for 2 years.
Right.
Because it's
Yeah,
been going
any of
through
us
the
have been looking,
CPUC
know
for
that's
approval
coming.
and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And everything has to go through application process to
Major-
CPUC.
yeah,
Exactly.
major
It's
changes
a
from the
long,
utility.
involved process.
Yeah, major changes from the utility, like changing the on-peak demand times and stuff, that they don't happen quickly. They happen over years.
We have a
Everything
couple
at
of
the utility
people,
happens over years.
If you read our contract, okay, it's in our contract that they have the right to change it.
so we had a couple of people from the audience that wanted to speak, Lori?
Yes, we do. Our first speaker is Pat English.
Hi, I think you all know me, Pat English, 2022T. I've been quite impressed by this presentation, but I do have a few credentials here. I'm not an engineer, but I have owned an HVAC company for a good many years now. I think it's 15 years. I don't own it now. My son owns it. That's in Tucson. Anyway, and the other thing is I am on the JRF board and the finance committee. So I think you should listen to me for a few minutes in any case because of my credentials. I think it was a great presentation. Bert stole everything I wanted to ask him, which was, what's the bottom line here? How much is this going to cost us if we try it out for a couple of months, we subscribe? And if it's half as good as he says it is, I think things will work out good. And Carl and Steve, you asked some very good questions. And Bill, thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else?
Hi. You mentioned that the average saving is 20%, but I'm going to assume in order to achieve that, that if you find deficiencies in some of the equipment, it has to be replaced. Is that correct?
Not necessarily replaced, sometimes.
Or repaired, whatever. So in other words,
would probably be the better word.
Step up to the mic, please.
Yeah, I would say optimized probably would be the better word. So it's not like the equipment is not operating the way it's being told to operate. It is. So there's nothing wrong really with the equipment. What's wrong is the way that it's being told to operate. So sometimes you need to change the direction of the equipment, tell it to operate differently. If that makes sense.
it does, but can you give examples of where you have saved the 20% and they didn't have to make any exorbitant, or I won't say exorbitant, you could tell us how much they had to invest in changing things or making repairs, because that's part of the cost of what, it's not just your service, it's what we may have to invest in order to bring us up to this 20% saving.
Just, Dick, my understanding is, from IT, that the systems that are installed now are sufficient and latest technology, or, they're not legacy technology. Things have been brought up to a standard.
Well, he mentioned that there are, if you don't monitor every minute, you can find things.
Understood. So, Matt? you
Yeah,
wanna-
so just, I threw this up here. This is one of our case studies with the same building, actually. It's the Thatcher building, but it really breaks down the economics of it. So I thought it would be good to at least briefly show it to you. So this project, this building is about half the size of this one. It's about a 30,000 square foot building. Actually goes through it has a couple air handlers, a few air handlers, 47 VAV boxes. And the total project cost was about $27,000, in which $17,000 of that was actually the commissioning or changing the rules to the EMS system. Period savings was about $12,000 for the 90-day period, which annualized is about $47,000, just under $50,000. Simple payback of about 7 months. So these are the types of projects that we find and that we do. But that's the point that I was making earlier, where this was $17,000 to commission the building, right? $27,000 in total. If they wanted to fully commission this building through another retro commissioning agency, this would have easily been a $70,000 to $85,000 price tag for the building, right? So it's really like a third of the cost of the total cost of the building, because we give them focused areas to what they need to do. So instead of being in there for months on end, they're in there for a couple days or a week, and they're actually just fixing the language and then updating it.
So Ernesto, you mentioned earlier, I believe, that this building is currently being commissioned?
That is correct. That's part of it. We got a brand-new system we're not even finished tweaking it.
The three HVACs
Exactly.
have been
Yeah.
installed, one for each
Yeah.
floor.
In fact, I
It's currently being
understand the
commissioned.
system is working fine.
Okay.
The issues now are with the EMS system, making sure that it's all tweaked correctly. And they're
Right.
going through that process. It's going to be a little while before they finish that.
Right. So at some point, we believe we're going to have a properly commissioned building again with the installation of the three new HVACs. But from what I'm hearing from Matt is that the services they provide are much more intricate, take more data points, and can possibly lead to further enhancements and refinements for even more energy efficiencies than we're currently aware of.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
Possible. I mean, at the same time, they're commissioning the building, right? So,
Right.
you know, at the end of the day, maybe they do a great job, and maybe we find very few things,
correct.
right? So, I mean, I can't tell you. It goes back to the whole, I don't know what I don't know.
Right,
But then it also goes back to the thing where, you know, if it's going to cost you $150 to monitor the building to make sure it stays the way that you've just invested, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of dollars into a new, you know, EMS system. I mean, $150 to monitor a building to ensure it doesn't drift is a very nominal fee to ensure that it stays on course.
yeah,
right?
I think the electric bill for this building is in excess of $200,000 a year. Not, I don't,
Yeah, I think the one
from
that Bert sent
2014.
me was about 20 grand for the month, right? So, yeah. But I think
That's,
that was
yeah,
a
I
summer
believe
month.
that's with the system that we had.
Right.
I don't know if we've gotten any, I haven't seen any deltas yet from what the new system
Yeah,
that
I
we
mean,
got.
you're buying a new EMS system, and
No,
they're
it's-
making changes. I would be shocked if there were not results from it, right?
The July bill, I think, was over 20,000 a month. This July.
Ernesto, isn't it true that the warranty on the roof equipment is for 5 years?
Yeah, I believe so. The 5 years sounds about right. Yeah, so I would need to verify that, but I think 5 years is what.
I think that's what the contract called for.
No.
Well, one of the things that Matt said, they had a client where, you know, they had a situation where the manufacturer said, this isn't, you're not operating
So that's
this
this one
within
actually. So
specification.
I'm going to step on your test. So that's this one right here. So that's actually the chiller that we found about a month ago. And that's what it looks like with the 15-minute interval data. And when these people are doing commissioning, that's what they're doing, right? They do a lot of cut and pasting, and I mean, they do some customized stuff for your locations. I'm not undermining them. They do
Right.
the job the best they can with the tools that they have.
Right, so part of the commissioning process, the contract that we have with them is to make sure that the system is operating as designed by the manufacturer.
So with that said, it might cost nothing for them to come back out and recommission the building. So if I say, come install my platform and I say, here, I found this, they're going to come out. Now, I would guess that they would come out and do it for free because they pretty much screwed up the first time that they were here. So that would be another benefit to maybe doing it now and monitoring it. And plus, it's a pretty low cost investment as far as risk.
Bill?
Yeah, Ernesto, we put a new HVAC system on the library. We put a new HVAC system on Clubhouse 5, and we put a new HVAC system on Clubhouse 2. Were each of those buildings commissioned?
I know that the ones that were done when I was here were commissioned. I couldn't tell you what happened with Clubhouse 2, and 5 was commissioned.
Okay,
The library was commissioned.
all right.
So we do have that information.
So that information is there. So those buildings, essentially, if we didn't want to do this building, we could have them do those buildings, essentially, if they're connected to EMS, right?
Yeah, I believe that they would be able to do any of the facilities here. You
Okay.
know, you have EMS on all of them, so.
You
I
got
think,
it?
I think we
Okay.
just did Clubhouse 6, and I think the demand charges on Clubhouse 6 was something like 36% of the overall bill.
So,
That-
so we've got
Hold on.
we've got lots of
Let's be recognized.
we've got lots of opportunity. Okay. And how soon do you think the the commissioning of this HVAC system in this building is going to be? When it's going to be done, you think?
When it's going to be completed, we've had some issues with the AMS. We should have been getting pretty close, so I'd say a few more weeks
So
before we get it.
on those other buildings, we haven't had issues with EMS?
Not to the extent that we've had them on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to recommend that Pat English sits in Jim Matson's
No.
chair.
Jim's no longer on the task force.
Oh, really?
Excuse me, can I just say one thing I forgot to say? I really think that Ernesto has some really talented people. Roger, for example, and West, can't remember his first name. And it seems to me like Ernesto should be able to have someone to help us with monitoring this if we decided to go ahead with it.
Ernesto, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you.
Well, as talented as they are, they don't have the capacity, the additional capacity relative to workload. And they do not have the specific talent relative to HVAC engineering or building engineering. So I would say that that's probably not a good idea.
So I'll ask you, Ernesto. Do you think that further examination and data collection could result in a positive result for GRF in reducing energy with the efficiencies of some monitoring without having to add staff to do it?
Well, that's an easy question and an easy answer. You know, over the years that I've been in business, information it's always good to have. I never got information that that wasn't worth something. It's that what is it worth that is really the question. Too much information that I got tons of information that this community has generated on my shelves in my office. You can welcome to go through it. Having the capacity to be able to act on that information, having the expertise in-house to be able to act on that information, and having the funding to make sure that you exact those changes to avail yourself of the savings. Those are key questions that you need to ask with any new technology that you want to bring in. So that's,
yeah.
hopefully I answer your question.
Right, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to call a special session of this task force, because more information is coming to us about what the demand charges we're paying at GRF, which, I wasn't certainly aware of that in the level of knowledge that I have today. I didn't have that 2 months ago. It's a process, and a lot of times for the boards, and staff. I mean, they're working on active issues, and they don't have the time or the foresight to be able to look at some of these more peripheral areas, which could be extremely beneficial to all the residents here. I mean, you just went through a budget process and everybody's going, oh my gosh, the dues are going up. Oh, the sky is falling, right? Well, in my mind, it's incumbent on all of the boards to do whatever they can to try to control costs wherever it's possible. So, if we're spending $1 million a year on electricity for GRF, and if we could find a way to save $100,000 or $200,000, whatever the number is, we haven't been talking about it. We've talked about energy savings. We've replaced light bulbs, right, in this building and in other buildings and in parking lots, and it's taken time, years and years and years. And, the EMS situation, I think, needs to be addressed in a more specific and aggressive manner. I think there is some cost benefit to be had, but it requires further investigation. So if anyone else doesn't have any other questions or anything, Steve?
Yeah, just for Ernesto, with the current commissioning process that's going on, if you don't have time to look at the analysis of it, how can we be sure that they're commissioning it properly?
Well, we do have the time to review the deliverables that were outlined in the scope of work for that commissioning. We will review the report, and we'll ask for the set of recommendations moving forward from the consultant. Like I said, we don't have building engineers in-house. We don't have HVAC engineers in-house. So we have to rely on the expertise of outside consultants to do that. Typically, they provide you the information through recommendations and a report. And we do have the capacity to do that. And of course, we review that because that's the deliverable of the contract. It's a static process, like Matt said. It's not something they're not going to continue to monitor it. They commission it, and they essentially telling you as the owner, this thing was put together like it was intended. You missed the design parameters, here you go, it's yours, and then you operate it. So what Matt is offering you is something a little bit different than that, is to actually do an ongoing and a more in-depth analysis of how the system is operating and all of that. This commissioning doesn't do that. What it does is make sure that you're operating whatever you got as per the parameters of the designer and the manufacturer, and that this thing is, in your contract, is being fulfilled.
Okay, so right now, what we have to do is take the information from the commissioning group, send it out to our analyst.
No, you don't have to do that. It should be a complete report outlining exactly how the system was installed and whether that meets the parameters of the designer. So that what they're
Oh,
telling.
okay.
Yeah, what they're telling you, they're checking on all of the set points for the system, if you would call it that, and making sure that it's operating as per what
Okay,
you
but
bought.
operating could be different than efficiencies.
No, they're making sure that the system will be set up initially as efficient as possible. What
Yeah.
Matt was referring to is that these buildings, they get set up certain way.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
their office space is laid out certain ways. All of a sudden, we poke a hole in the roof to put an entrance, we do this, we change configurations. Nobody's monitoring that moving forward.
Yeah, they're also dealing with the data that they have, right? So these commission agents are great, right? So I want to take nothing away from them because they're dealing with tools that they have. They don't have the tools that we have, right? This gathering data at 1-minute intervals, gathering more granular data from different data points, and the way we run our analytics separates us from the way that a standard energy management system runs, right? So they may put everything together perfectly, but you're only changing out the brains, right? You're not changing out the equipment, right? You're just changing out the brains, telling the equipment what to do, where there's going to be some benefit to that. And I would be shocked if you guys didn't see at least a 10% reduction, just changing out your energy management system. Sometimes it's a little bit more. But there's nobody to really police the commissioning agent, right? There's nobody that says, hey, this building was commissioned perfectly, right? And even if they do it, perfectly to the set of standards and tools that they have, there's nobody that says, you know what, they missed some things because they didn't have that granularity of data. My CEO always says we can hire anybody out of high school to run our analytics, right? Most of them are available on Google or different IT sites and stuff like that. Running the analytics and finding the analytics are not the hard part. The most difficult part is gathering the data, and that's where Berkeley National Labs and EPRI and all those guys who we work with very closely, they think that we separate from everybody else because you can find other companies like Johnson Controls and stuff that do analytics. But the challenge that they have is they cannot gather all the right data in a high resolution that they need to. And we got 5 patents on this bad boy right here. So we're fairly protected on the way that we gather data, and that's what really kind of separates us from a lot of the competition as well. But data is the big thing, right? It's not, it's data and then doing something with it, right? It's the analytics piece is the easier piece of what we do.
Carl, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to finally say, because we're going to be breaking here for a minute. When we get beyond the commissioning for this particular building, okay, if we do decide to go with some sort of a monitoring system, since we don't have building engineers, we would probably have to do a similar thing like we've done on the solar power plant task force, where we've got Phoenix basically monitoring the thing, and if there's something that needs to get fixed or what have you, okay, they come out here and they do it. So he said he partners with various others that can come up with some sort of a contract, because beyond that, having the data and then not being able to do anything with the data, okay, that's a waste of time, okay? And then at the end of the day, obviously it comes down to price, okay? If we're paying $20,000 a month for electricity, hypothetically, okay, and it's costing us that much money to do this contract, obviously there's no cost-benefit analysis there. So, we would have to do that cost-benefit analysis.
Our goal for cost is to do our best to stay below 2% of your annual, like for monthly spend, so our monthly spend is less than 2% on your average monthly payment. So that's our goal from a cost perspective, and we're usually below that, almost in all cases, sometimes even a little bit lower.
But that would also have to include the person that we then contract with to do whatever actual grunt work that's needed, okay?
Correct, right, but that's usually just a one-time fee, so that's like saying, well, what would my energy reduction be to do this project if I were to change out my light bulbs, right? So it's a similar
Okay.
type of payback to those, right?
That's-
Bert, you had something?
As a director of GRF, and I take a look at the GRF energy bills, anything that we could do to bring down the cost of electricity is going to be welcomed. I feel that this is something that we need to know ROI. If you want to factor in what it would cost to have a company sign a contract to maintain stuff, that's well and good. A lot of the stuff that we've now got in our buildings is relatively new and under warranty. So we may decide that we don't even need that, okay? But I think it's something we want to pursue and look at, okay? So what we would like to see is a proposal. Perhaps staff could work jointly to come up with a proposal to determine what the ROI is on this thing so that we can take it to the board. And we would recommend that.
So I'm going to, since Richard and Bert are GRF board members, it's, in my mind, their responsibility to go back to their board and discuss what they've learned today with their board members and finance department or whatever, and make whatever recommendations they feel are appropriate. And then if the GRF board wants to come back to this task force and ask us for continued involvement, that's their choice. The purpose of the meeting today was just to learn what is the current technological capability of EMS systems with cloud-based and artificial intelligence that we didn't know prior to this. Carl?
Just so we don't get our hands slapped here, I think it's got to go back to GRF
Yes, but I just-
M&C first,
Well-
because we are a task force off of M&C. We get this, otherwise we get our hands slapped. I'm just saying.
Do you need a motion?
Why? That's up to GRF. You guys go do whatever you, we weren't asked to look into this, right? Called the meeting for informational purposes for our own benefit.
But that's one of the reasons why we have the Energy Task Force.
Understood.
Because like he said, we don't know what we don't know.
Understood, but I'm trying to be very careful here because,
But-
you know, what's happened in the past and what happens in the futures can be two different things here. And I'm trying my best to align this task force to work within the parameters of which it was charged and not to exceed or overstep boundaries, because we don't need to be criticized for that.
Well, I need a recommendation from the Energy Committee to go to GRF or the task force.
Okay, to
That's
somebody,
the role that we play, right?
do you want to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Yeah.
Motion that we have the the task force members from GRF take this forward to the GRF M&C.
Second? Steve Parsons? Any further discussion? Can we vote?
Sure.
All in favor? Unanimous? Okay. With that, I think I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming.